salutations. We are here as ambassadors of the Ecumen Empire, so please, humbly accept us and listen to us with open ears and an open mind and an open heart. We are the Chapter Chumps. We're your chumps here to talk some chapters. Today on the podcast, we're going to be discussing chapters 3 and 4 of Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left-Handed Darkness. And, that's what we got on the docket today. How we doing? What's going on, guys? What up?
Bad day.
You all right there, Connor? Yeah. You can do it, boy. You can do it.
I'm doing all right.
No, you're doing shit. You're doing dog shit.
I'm doing all right.
Okay. That's great. That's wonderful. I hope you are. I really do. I hope
Thanks.
You're doing all right. But just to look at you, it seems like probably not.
I feel like a monkey's backside.
Yeah. Yep. Which doesn't have to be bad. Sometimes you see videos of monkeys getting groomed. Some other monkeys picking out all the lice and
yeah. I mean, really, I'm thinking of the pink of the baboons where they got the pink behinds.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of how I feel.
Oh yeah, that's a no-go.
It's just
That's not good.
like burning red.
Yeah.
There's a cream for that.
Just everything's inflamed. Actually,
yeah,
really,
Josh, I've used that cream and it doesn't work. Let me tell you, it's a useless fucking cream.
Connor has used plenty of creams on plenty of different body
Plenty
parts.
of places.
Yep.
Creams hardly ever work. I don't trust cream. The only cream that I like is whipped.
Whipped.
Oh, actually, cream cheese is good.
Not
too.
even ice cream.
Ice cream, cream cheese, whipped cream. No, I like those things.
I think I just proved you wrong.
You've got me rethinking cream in a whole new light.
What
Actually,
about,
the
Cream
band
Dream Team.
That's right, and Cream the band, they're okay too.
It's true, yeah.
If you're into that
What are they
kind
up?
of thing.
What are they up to these days?
Nothing. Most of them are dead.
Let's look into this. Let's see. Cream,
They're mostly dead.
Cream Wikipedia. Cream Wikipedia.
How's Eric Clapton doing these days?
Let's take a look. It says
he
Cream
doing?
were a British rock group, supergroup formed in London, 1966.
So past tense.
Consisted of bassist Jack Bruce, guitarist Eric Clapton, and drummer Ginger Baker.
Yeah.
Past members include Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, and Ginger Baker.
Yeah, I'm not just pulling cream out of my ass here, guys. Okay, if I'm referencing something, then I at least have a passing knowledge where I can pretend to know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I also
Cream
have a
is
passing
not a band
knowledge
anymore.
of several bands, but I can name a person from like half of them because they are named after the person.
Yeah, Eric Clapton's really famous though. But
Oh yeah,
his name's
Ginger
in Cream, so I
Baker.
wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce are both dead.
Yeah.
Eric Clapton, unfortunately, is still alive.
We'll get him one of these days.
Yep.
The bastard. Well, whatever. That's enough. That's enough bants. We got plenty to talk about here.
Time for the
So yeah, we read chapters 3 and 4 of The Left-Handed Darkness. It's hard to say if I understand the world of The Left-Handed Darkness any better than I did last week or not, but
I think we got some answers.
That's part of what we're going to be discussing. I'm kind of just wondering before we get into like specifics, just like how are we feeling generally about reading the book 4 chapters in? Just like I'm literally checking in on your feelings towards it. Are you looking forward to reading it? Are you excited to sit down and crack open the book? Are you enjoying it as you're turning the pages?
I think it's a little too early to make that particular judgment. I mean, I'm enjoying getting back into the swing of reading for the podcast. at the very least. As for the book itself, it's still at the discovery phase of reading. So
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
that's kind of how I feel.
this is my second time reading it. And yeah, I found it very, it's, we're 4 chapters in now, and it's already feels rewarding, kind of remembering these characters and this world. I've been enjoying it. It feels like a good. I mean, although they're both, I guess, sci-fi, kind of. It feels like a good change of pace from 2001 and the
Yeah.
sequel.
Yeah, it is definitely a different beast. Um, I've been enjoying it so far, and I feel like the first 2 chapters definitely hooked me, and then like these previous or these last 2 chapters that we're going to discuss, um, I liked, but thought I was going to feel sort of like further, um, like ensnared and brought into like the fold even deeper, and I don't want to be so quick to say like that's not really what's happening. Sometimes over the course of a discussion, especially a book discussion with friends, you might find that the hooks could be in a little bit deeper than it seems at times, right? It's like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
just talking out these ideas kind of crystallizes certain things in your mind. And I definitely enjoyed these last 2 chapters, but um but I don't know. I'm still kind of like, maybe I'm a little bit with Josh too, and just sort of like it's like there's still so much it feels like to piece together. And this whole like one chapter is the book, and then one chapter is like a little aside story, has me um trying to like piece all these things together, and so yeah, I guess it does feel like there's a lot to figure out. But the other thing I wanted to mention is just I do feel like the act of reading it is uh pretty engaging and pretty breezy despite all the foreign made up vocabulary. Um I still remember back to like reading through our 2 Lord of the Rings chapters, and uh as much as I liked talking about Lord of the Rings, a lot of our conversation would sometimes be like, man, it was tough to read. Like the language is dense and it's dry, and so far Ursula K. Le Guin's writing has been I think a cool mix of like um clearly very intellectual, but then also just sort of interwoven with a lot of like casual, easy to understand description and language. And so, yeah, so it's been cool. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of a slow burn. Not obviously to give anything a- away, but yeah, I think we're definitely in the introduction part of the book still. And yeah, like with this format, so far, like you mentioned, it's been one chapter of story, one chapter of like uh excerpt from a historical book or whatever,
Or just folklore.
or folklore. I think it's even slower of a burn while we're doing it 2 chapters at a time.
Right.
Which I mean, I really appreciate. I'm like really soaking it all in, because I have some knowledge of I read it 4 years ago now, over 4 years ago, so my memory is pretty terrible. So I have some knowledge of what's to come, which I think does I'm definitely more on bored and ready to soak it all in. So the pacing doesn't bother me really, but you know, as a first time reader, I think I could understand. I mean, when I first read this, I definitely didn't do it 2 chapters at a time. I was
Right.
you know, devouring it. So
Yeah, and that's an important like caveat or note just on, you know, any book we read, like um because we limit ourselves in that way in order to have like our book discussions, um you know, that just kind of comes with the territory. And I think there are books that we've read that are really well suited toward it. And yeah, again, 4 chapters in, first time reader, I can't really say if this book is or isn't really suited for that, but I do think maybe that's part of like where Josh and I are coming from too. So I think it's a good thing to point out. It's just like, yeah, if we weren't you know, putting a limit on ourselves in that way, then it probably wouldn't feel as much of a slow burn because you would just be reading it. And yet that's not how we do things here at Chapter Chumps. So
true.
very, very true. All right. Well, when last we spoke, our last 2 chapters kind of ended with Genli I, our ambassador for the Ecumen Empire on the planet of Gethin, otherwise known as Winter. And Genli is here to try to bring the planet of Gethin or the kingdom of Karhide, or both, I don't really know, into the Ecumen Empire, because that's kind of like what they do. It talks more about that in this chapter. And Estraven, who was sort of like the attendant to the king, kind of like the right-hand man, well, him and Genli had this conversation at Estraven's house, and Estraven was like, hey, you know, things are not really actually set up for you to go have a nice conversation with the king. Might not turn out that well. Sorry, just thought I should let you know. And then our second chapter, we get this whole, yeah, Josh was saying, I think like a piece of folklore on Gethurin or Gether, someone like that, who has that kind of name. And this whole thing with his brother and Kemmer and yeah, you know, there plenty of ideas in those first 2 chapters are expanded on here in chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3, I think it's just called the Mad King. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, the Mad King. We do get that conversation between Genli and the King of Karhide, Argavin the 15th, and Argavin. Yeah,
I think it's Argavin, kind of like Estraven.
Probably.
Yeah. There's no way to know unless we called up Ursula K. Le Guin. She's not dead, is she?
She is.
Yes, she is.
Last week.
She died last week?
No,
we had the same conversation last week, I'm pretty sure.
I know. I'm just pulling your leg. Come on.
No, Josh. I think Josh just mentioned it in passing. Week.
No, he did. He did.
You must have not been paying attention.
No. I knew that.
Typical.
I knew that. I'm just having some fun here, and now you're going to turn it around and make it look like I'm not paying attention just because I'm the only one who gets drunk whenever we have a podcast.
We're not allowed to have fun around here.
That's right. Josh, you're not drinking, are you?
I have water.
Drinking on the job, Mr. O?
No.
What if we call Josh Mr. O?
That'd be horrible.
It would be horrible. Thank
you.
One
of the worst things you can do.
Does that mean we should do it then?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I really don't think so.
Just kind of like Harley Quinn calls the Joker Mr. J.
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of cute.
Are you going to be Mr. M?
No, it's only Josh's thing.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's nobody's thing.
All right, Mr. O.
What if we just shortened it? Instead of Mr. O, we call him Mo?
Oh,
No.
I like that.
What do you think about Mo?
I like that a lot.
Josh?
Nope. Do not like.
Got it. Connor, he does not like Mo.
Well, what do you like less, Mr. O or Mo?
I want to be called by my real name.
No, we know what you want to be called. We're just asking you what you like less, Mr. O or Mo.
I'm not going to answer that because I know exactly what you'll do with that answer.
All right, Connor, there's only one sensible thing to do in this situation.
Drop it.
You call Josh Mr. O the entire time, and I'll call him Mo. So that way we get both sides of it.
Deal.
Nope.
That's brilliant. Good job.
All right.
Fuck you guys.
I know. We are. It's true. We're not allowed to have fun on the podcast. Let's end it.
No fun.
We're done. What were we talking about? We were talking about
The Mad King.
The Mad King. So Genly has his conversation with Argiven the 15th, and the quick summation of the chapter is it kind of doesn't go that well. And that's a very quick summation because the conversation is basically the entirety of the chapter, and a lot is discussed and gleaned and talked about. But ultimately, yeah, it's not the success that Genly was maybe naively sort of hoping for.
You.
Wow,
take that down.
Connor.
Seriously, take it down.
Wow, Connor, you're such an ass. You are such an asshole. You are. And I said it before the podcast started. I was like, you're just such a little shit, and you know it. And now look at you.
Okay, fun has been had. Fun has my mic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, your mic, Connor. Your mic is on the way out. Like it is.
It is.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get a new mic.
Yeah, I mean, you got it. Come on, you can't just drop $20 on just a crappy microphone.
I know. I cannot go back. Anyways,
Don't you still have the same USB mic that we have? That we're
I
using?
do have it. Yeah, I do have it somewhere.
Yeah, you should find that.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, I just want to apologize for that. I just, I wanted to have a little bit of fun, but that's over.
Yeah, you had too much fun. I think
I
it's
had
the
a
problem.
little bit too much fun. Yeah.
It was hard to gauge. You wanted to have a little bit of fun. And you went a little bit over.
I went overboard.
I get it. The important thing is that you apologize. So thank you, Connor. Okay. What do we make of this chapter?
Ooh, sorry, I dropped out there for a second.
Oh, Josh, do you want to start? I was really just wondering, like, what do you make of this chapter here? What did you think?
Well, I think Connor needs to stop messing around with the settings. After the podcast.
He's having too much fun right now. You just gotta let him have fun. This is well,
here's the thing.
Intrusive fun. It's okay.
Well, no, here's the thing. I have you guys up on one screen, and I have the Twitch chat open on the other screen in case we ever, for some miracle, have an audience member to interact with. But the Twitch stream is on like a 3-second delay. So whatever he's doing on this screen is also happening on this screen, but 3 seconds later. So it's very distracting.
Double whammy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, hey, if you're listening and you'd like to interact with us live, we're doing this live as a video podcast now on Twitch. You can check out our Blue Sky because I tweet the link out since we don't have like an official Chapter Chumps Twitch channel just yet. We're still working on that in the background, figuring out what we want to do. But for now, be sure to follow us on social media so that you can see when we're going live. Because Lord knows we can never do that on time. Anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, last week someone else was responsible for that, so kind of a funny comment to make, but...
Yeah, I know.
Right.
That's why I said we.
Okay.
This week it was your fault.
Yeah, it felt like it did feel like a bit of an accusatory we. That was
all right, boys.
Yeah.
I'm down.
But that's fair.
Anyway, I like this chapter. I wish we had 2 chapters of this length, or amount of content, because one conversation is not quite a lot for us to discuss. But there, at the same time, there was a lot of stuff that popped up relevant to last week's conversation. Sorry, there's something rubbing outside. Oh man. See, I just reread this like 3 hours ago, not even, in preparation for the podcast, and now it's all just leaving my head.
Josh, have you been taking notes?
No, I haven't, because my normal note taking system is either to highlight on my Kindle, which obviously we have a physical copy. I can't do that this time around, or I do small sticky notes that stick out in the margins. But this book is so compact that I just haven't been able to do that. Plus, I just finished dinner, so I'm just in that post dinner stupor where thoughts don't really work well.
All right, so do you want me to start?
That's probably for the best, instead of me rambling and making excuses.
That's all right. Okay, so a couple things. I did take some notes going through it. I thought it was interesting that this chapter does not begin with a citation, unlike the first two chapters. Mm-hmm. And the fourth chapter has one as well. This chapter just doesn't have one.
Maybe because it's a continuation of the first one? Or the last one that had a... Yeah, the first one. Sorry. The second one was aside.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it is just because it's meant to be lumped in with the first chapter. I don't know. This chapter made me think a lot about like language and what the characters look like, because both of those things come up several times within this chapter. And the reason I'm like thinking about that after talking about no citation at the beginning of this chapter is because especially with regards to language, and I'll look at some specifics here, but it got me thinking about like what language are characters even speaking, and is it different from how it's recorded in the book, and like is this meant to be English? Like and so yeah, and so like thinking about the citation thing, it's like I don't know. Like when we were reading Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's really clear that the whole framing device for Lord of the Rings is that Tolkien is himself a translator of the Red Book of Westmarch, and the Lord of the Rings is a translation of that book into English. And so like that matters. And I'm not saying that I need that level of specificity in this book,
but you want it.
Well, it's not even that I want it. It's that the book's making me think about it. And I'm like, am I meant to assume that Genly is writing in English when he's like, is what I'm reading his actual report? When he's speaking, like, did he have to learn Karhiddish or whatever?
I mean,
when he came from the Ecumen Empire?
Yeah, it says he did.
Right. And so what they're speaking is not really what's like on the page, right? Because Karhiddish isn't, it's translated. It's already translated for us, the reader.
Yes.
Yep. And since it's sci-fi, we could just say it's universal translator and move on.
yeah, I mean pretty much, but I guess what I mean is like I don't think the way the book is written, it just wants you to move on. I think that there's things within the book that is there to get you to think about it.
Right. No, yeah, I meant that as just a joke, but I mean, there's definitely parts of this chapter where it's like, oh, there's no word for war in Karhiddish or Karhiddish. He uses the word for the word female that is referring to Gethenin in the Height of Kemmer, and not the alternative word, which would just be for a female animal.
Yeah, yes. So now you guys maybe have some more understanding about gender on the planet, maybe?
Are the Gethenians the only ones with this fluidity?
Well, yeah. I mean, the humans on this planet, they say that this is the only place that's found in their universe, or in the in their known universe, and so I mean, I think the implication from this chapter really is that all get of Winter's human inhabitants are male except for during Kemmering.
Yeah, I did want to talk about that, and I thought about that more in the second chapter, chapter 4, because um the whole story where the partner, the person's partner goes out to the weavers, the foretellers. They're both described as male, um and yeah, like we're presented with that as it said they were bonded by Kemmer in love and in vow or something like that. And of course, reading another book, it's not like you'd be like, what, two guys? It's like, they could be gay. But very obviously within this book, but there's a completely different understanding that you're meant to have. And it did lead me to that thought, Connor, that um uh essentially, like, where are all the women at? There just are not
Where
any,
the chicks at?
and
Where the chicks at? And I mean, talking
I did get to that, yeah.
Yeah, talking more about the first chapter though, with the king, when you know, I'm gonna call this guy Genly.
Yeah.
I hear
You're with Genly now, okay.
I hear it in my head as Genly. I'm gonna see like gender.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Why not? When Genly is talking to the king, and explaining to him that this their concept of gender or their human reproduction it's like unique within the scope of their knowledge of the universe and of humankind. He calls them all sex perverts.
Yes.
He's like,
yeah.
you guys out there, so you're just like this all the time. What are
Yeah.
you, sex perverts? So it's yeah, it's a very that's a huge distinction between the alien and the home team. And it's funny, but also it just gets into why he's seen as so different or feels so different, even though he on the outside he even says he can kind of probably pass for a Gathenian,
Yeah.
and skin tone wise isn't that far away from some of them. So yeah, I don't know. We can talk about more of that discussion with the king when Genly walks in and he's super confident, or he's cool, calm. He's not very confident it's going to go well, that his conversation with the king, but he's calm and collected until he hears this radio report,
Yes.
which is cool because although they do have television and writing and stuff on Winter, the most common form of media is radio. They prefer to consume their news and media from via audio. And then he hears all about Estraven's exile, or his public defamation and sentencing to exile, and that immediately puts him on fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
I will say that that whole section had me a little confused because at the beginning it reads like a radio broadcast, but at the end it turns into a printed proclamation that he saw on the way in and was just like copying into his report. So it's a weird transition where at the very end it goes from radio, like news broadcaster, to this is an official document signed by the king.
Yeah. I remember that. I think it's sort of like, I get that that's how Genly writes it in the report. I think it's sort of meant to be both. Like, I think the broadcast and I kind of took it as the broadcast to be the broadcast, and that this is just a verbatim writing of it that is posted. that there's effectively no difference between the broadcast and the written post, and that the radio broadcast just repeats the message that you can read elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's what I got from it as well. I'm just saying it was a little confusing reading it and seeing that transition. I don't know. Crap, what was I gonna say? Fuck.
Was it about Estraven's banishment?
No, I mean it seems pretty straightforward. We were expecting that from the first. No, we weren't expecting it from the first chapter. What we got in the first chapter was that Estraven was on the outs with the king, but not to the point of banishment. So, I don't know. This whole time, I feel like Genly has been having miscommunication issues with
Definitely.
everybody around him. I mean, there's even a part in this where I think it's on page 42. Nope, that's a different thing. It's right when he's starting to talk with the king, but he basically it basically amounts to he was having like what's the wording here? I think it's like right at the page change. This is gonna bother me. I'm sorry.
Do you remember like what the gist of it is? What are you referring to?
It's like he's trying to convey that. Oh wait, did I find it? No. Oh. He's talking about he is referring to the way the court of Agravain works, or how Karhaidish culture works, and that there's this thing that I can't pronounce properly that basically amounts to rules of etiquette, as far as I understand it. Oh, here it is. Shifgrathor.
Yeah.
But it's about 2/3 of the way down on page 35. That I was not dealing with Agravain, but trying to communicate him was in itself an incommunicable fact.
Yeah.
So sorry, it's that weird word incommunicable that I could not pull from my head, but that's kind of what I feel like has been going on for the last 2 chapters we've had with Genly, where he's been among these people for 2 years, yes, but he's not. He may have learned the language, yes, but he's not learning the culture as much as he probably could be, or could have in this time. He's not. He doesn't understand what they're trying to tell him, and he's taking things as the way he sees it, or how he can interpret it, I guess. Because at the end of the chapter, he's like, "Why did Estraven lie to him? Why did the king lie to him?" And he immediately concludes that Estraven lied to save his skin and the king lied to save face. But then he starts to rethink that a little bit before the end of the chapter ends, which we can get into later because I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what his conclusion was. But it's coming across to me that Genly does not fully understand the Gathenian people yet, and that's causing maybe half the issues that he has here. But he is not completely clueless, because when he's right before he gets the king to ask the question on the Ansible, he realizes that he's trapped the king in like a some sort of rhetorical honor trap.
Yeah.
Which the king does not like.
Yeah. I liked that, just because I thought that was one of the most interesting parts of the conversation. There's also this really, really great parts sort of on that note where the king asks, like, how many kingdoms are part of the Ecumen Empire, and Genly kind of goes through. It feels like he almost has like this canned answer, like he's on like a customer service call, and he's like, well, there's 83 planets, and on those planets there's 3,000 kingdoms or whatever nations. And that's the only thing that that the king hears. He turns around and he's like, 3,000 enemies, huh? And Genly has a similar reflection in his writing where he's like, oh, when I said that, the king thought I was dueling him, essentially, like with my words.
Right.
And
they don't know how to have a conversation like this without dueling.
Yeah.
In that way, and Genly doesn't know how to he doesn't know how to duel. He doesn't know how to duel in that way. So that's where they're at an impasse. And I want to say too, Connor, you just, I'm not saying you're wrong or anyone, but I think it's interesting how you you are, there we go. You're giving some Argivan vibes. You're mentioning Ecumen Empire. There's all these kingdoms. That's not language. This is not language that's used by Genly, or that is similar to how the king is thinking of
right.
the Ecumen. Whereas we're going to learn more about it as we go on, obviously, but I just wanted to make that distinction, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I was sort of trying to speak from his perspective, because I was trying to go off of this bit where it's like, I think that Genly kind of explains a lot, and the king only hears one thing. He just hears the words like 3,000. Because the king, I think, feels like he asks a very clear question. He's like, I think the question literally is like, how many kingdoms? And then, Genly is like, oh, well, it's a little more complicated than that. And he goes through his whole spiel. And then the king turns around and he's like, 3,000. 3,000 fucking sex perverts are out there fucking around. And you want me to just sign on the dotted line. Like, but that's like a really compelling miscommunication. And, obviously that's like a lot of the intrigue and interest of the story is like based on that communication.
That's a miscommunication that could get you into some hot water.
Yes. Yeah. And it already seems like it has. It has.
Yeah.
It already has.
But it's starting to boil. To boil a bit.
There's a few things plenty of things are connected to this, but one thing, sort of maybe bringing together the whole like radio broadcast point, hot water point, miscommunication point. So Estraven has been like officially banished. He has the punishment is like, that he's exiled from the hearth, and he has 3 days time to leave, and no one can talk to him, and it's very specific. And
what's the line later in the chapter? It's life on Gethen is so hard that there's death isn't really in the law. It's just they just let nature take care of it.
Right. They don't need a death sentence. They just say like, you're banished, and it feels a lot like Arrakis in that regard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sounds like Dune.
Yep.
Winter, it was created to test the faithful.
Yes, exactly. But what I wanted to get back to is this whole Estraven thing. And even within the scope of just this one chapter, we get that the broadcast is saying that Estraven has been exiled, effectively sentenced to death for the crime of being a traitor. And it's even more specific than that. He's a traitor because he was trying to convince the king to join the Ecumen Empire. They call it like some alliance of worlds or something. Like to weaken the power of the king by joining the empire.
If one ever so possibly existed.
Yeah. And of course,
Also,
there's.
I'm sorry. Every time you say that, I just keep thinking Eggman Empire.
Well, you're gonna be thinking it for a while, Josh, because
Yeah, another 8 weeks or so.
I'm gonna keep saying it. But it's just really fascinating because, of course, we already knew that that wasn't true, and then in the chapter, everyone knows it's not true. The king knows it's not true. The king and Genly have a really candid conversation. That's what surprised me the most.
Yeah.
I thought that the king was going to be,
insane.
well, yes, yeah, insane to the point where, like, completely irrational and has like no grasp on reality. And it's like there's some things that you could say like, well, maybe that's there a bit, right? Like Genly seems to think so, but the king's very much aware of the situation, and the king's very much aware of Genly's role, and so of course the chapter sort of ends begging the question, like, what's really going on? There's a bit of a mystery to unravel here. Famously, I love mysteries. I hate unraveling them.
Yes.
I hate unraveling a good mystery. You got to keep that mystery raveled,
Just enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
Connor loves a good raveled mystery.
I do.
Maybe only Josh and I will read the last chapter. You can just stop at
we gotta wait
9.
that long? Fuck.
No, I'm sure not. I don't know. It already feels like there's kind of answers. It's like we know from Estraven's conversation with Genly from the first chapter that Estraven thinks that he has a target on his back because he was openly defying this contested area that the king is trying to, I don't know, absorb violently or bring under control, and Estraven is like, oh yeah, I tried to help some people there because he has ties there somehow, and so that is itself a traitorous act, and Estraven says as much in the first chapter, and he's like, so I think everything's a little bit fucked right now, and I know that I'm a little bit fucked, and something's about to happen that's not good. The interesting twist here is that that's not what he's publicly charged with at all, and so It just seems to me that the king doesn't want to connect that crime to Estraven, because it probably looks bad to say that Estraven is exiled because he was trying to save a bunch of farmers. And so instead it's like we can just point at the weird alien who looks different from us, by the way, and he's darker.
Checking his pants too. It's all fucked up in there.
Yeah. And there's this whole other, capital O, other. The other are coming in, and they're different. They're different. So
he also he doesn't believe that Genly's the only one on the planet because, well, Genly straight up admits there were a bunch of people there 40 years ago. And so the king seems to think towards the end of their meeting that Genly's just the prelude to an invasion.
Yeah.
They have that nice little metaphor discussion of like how many aliens does it take to open the door. And it's like it doesn't take 1,000 people to open a door, but how many to keep it open.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. It is just generally explaining kind of their whole strategy here. Obviously there was a team 40 years ago. Generally says, like, if you want me to leave, I'll leave, but I'm just gonna come back. Like, I'm gonna just get in my ship and then turn around, and I'll be back in a generation to try to convince your grandson or whatever.
And the king just straight up asks him, wait, are you immortal? And he's like, no, time dilation. The whole scenario of what the Ekumen's doing here very much reminds me of like First Contact scenarios in Star Trek, or other media, but Star Trek's the big one where First Contact is like the phrase. It also kind of reminds me a bit about current UFO lore. Where he's like, oh yeah, there were people here like 40 years ago, and then we got one guy right now to kind of like be the voice of the Ekumen and like prepare people, and then
Elon Musk.
No. That's
Tom DeLonge.
Closer.
I'd say we're currently in between the Vanguard and the single voice.
In between Elon Musk and Tom DeLonge, huh?
Mm.
Jeez.
The Musk-DeLong spectrum, as they call it.
Yeah.
We're smack dab in the middle of the Musk-DeLong spectrum.
Who would be in the middle? What known public figure would be in the middle on that spectrum? Josh is tapping out. He says, I can't do this, guys. I'm sorry.
I spent too much time reading news. I can't do this right now.
Yeah, it's a good. Oh, you know who I think it would be? You know who I think it would be?
Who?
The guy from the History Channel who goes aliens.
Oh, that's that he might be him actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's coming back. He's going to he's going to get a cabinet position in the Trump administration.
Yeah. I'm surprised he doesn't have one already.
Yeah. He had crazy hair too, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He seemed like a bit of a crazy guy, but in a good way.
Yeah.
In a really endearing sort of way. Hope he's still all right.
I hope I never learn more about him.
Yeah.
I don't even want to know his name. I'm gonna leave it at that.
It was long. His last name was long.
Yeah. Let's not DeLong.
No. But he's in the middle of that spectrum for sure.
All right. Anyways.
Yeah. Oh, I thought why were we? Oh, because Josh was talking about. Oh, this reminds him of First Contact. Star Trek.
It is a First Contact scenario. It's just it's not like people coming in and saying take us to your leader. It's a slow, methodical, just contact scenario where the Ecumen is introducing themselves and inviting them to the to join, but not everyone wants to do that right away. But if there's one thing the Ecumen has, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
That has an abundance. Sorry.
No, you're right, Josh. It's a
operates...
slow, methodical process that ends with them saying, "Take me to your leader."
Yes, I realized when I said "take me to your leader," it's like that's exactly what Genli's doing.
It is just funny that's what happens. Yeah, I had to point that out. Sorry.
Oh crap. But yeah, no. It's one of those. I don't want to say scary things, but it's. I don't know. Maybe this kind of borders on the definition of. Oh, shit, what's the word? Like, the Lovecraft theme.
Cosmic horror.
Yes. Of the Ecumen is this big entity out in the unknown that has all the time you could possibly ever want, and it's going to get you eventually. It's just, is it going to be this generation or the next? And it operates on timescales longer than the typical human lifespan.
Yeah, well, to Argivin, it absolutely falls into the cosmic horror category.
And even to Genli to some degree, because he's like, yeah, I'm going to, if I fail, I can just jump in a spaceship and be back in a couple hours, and 40 years will have passed. But that's also like, that's 40 years when he's not in contact with his superiors. He could have like 3 generations of superiors go by.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also an element of like existential crises, like for him thinking like, I have to make peace with coming to terms with like this might be the rest of my life.
Yeah,
like
the chapter is like First Contact's not a safe job. You could easily be killed or imprisoned.
Yeah, he gave examples. He gave examples of what happened to others.
And what was I gonna say here? This whole first section of the chapter basically gives us a good insight of the technology level that this universe operates at, where they have what do they call them? It's like Nafar ships nearly as fast as Nafal nearly as fast as light. So these are ships.
I didn't piece together that acronym. That was a good one.
I took a moment to piece that one together when I was reading it. NAFAL. An NFAL ship takes 67 years to go between Gethen and Hain. But basically what that means is like these ships are traveling at 99.9 whatever speed percent the speed of light, which means they're limited by light speed on everything they do except direct communication via the Ansible. And there's another piece of technology that's popping up to give us a clue of how this universe operates. But they don't have FTL. They don't have or FTL travel. Everything operates on a very grounded, real world basis so far, which is weird considering our first part conversation last week involved Ursula Le Guin talking about how every novelist is a fucking liar and absolutely insane for inventing anything with their imagination. So here we are in a very grounded universe that's a little surprising to me, just how normal it is so far on a technology standpoint.
I guess. I mean, I get your meaning that it's like connected to. It's connected. The explanation for these things is tied to reality, but at the same time, I wasn't reading it like, oh yeah, that may, when they describe the Ansible and Genly starts to explain it to the king before being like, the king doesn't give a shit how this works. Genly's like, well, it kind of functions on the same principle as gravity, which means that, it operates simultaneously at one point as it does anywhere else in the universe. And I'm like, what? Yep. Excuse me? I mean, like, sure, you can say that, but there's no way to harness that into a piece of technology. Like it is fantastical.
Right. Yeah, he begins to explain how the Ansible works in a way that sounds like it could be true, which is kind of how it's technobabble. That's how technobabble works. And then he cuts off the explanation and gets to the point of what it does. He goes from how to what it does. And I will say at the beginning of our discussion tonight, I was thinking about the word Ansible because I've heard that word before in other pieces of literature that I've read, specifically Ender's Game. And while you guys were bantering on about something at the beginning of this podcast, I don't even remember what at this point, I was thinking, like, Ender's Game came out after The Left Hand of Darkness. So I started, and this whole time, Ansible had been this thing that I just kind of assumed came from Ender's Game, because that's where I read it first. But obviously that timeline wasn't adding up in my head, so I looked it up. Apparently, Ursula K. Le Guin is the person who coined the term Ansible for a device that communicates faster than light. And it's not this book where it first shows up. But I think this is one of the, according to Wikipedia, this is probably the one that explains how it works a little bit more. Specifically that passage where we were just discussing a moment ago. But yeah, it's picked up by other authors, and there's a whole section on the Wikipedia page about Orson Scott Card's works, who wrote Ender's Game. So yeah, the Ansible is a device in a universe without FTL travel that allows for FTL communication. And I've always assumed that they work on like a quantum, like spooky action and distance kind of technology, but or principle. But that's me going into super hard sci-fi brain, which I don't think we need right now. So
it is cool to fill in those little pieces of like the science fiction story. You never know what you're gonna find when you crack open a sci-fi book from the 20th century, or earlier.
Yeah, wait till we read Mary Shelley.
Yep. Just wait. Time is all we have, and we have a lot of it, boys. Kind of feels like this podcast is like the Ecumen Empire, right? Just going to be doing it forever.
Yep.
More than once, I've been talking to you too, and I'm like, I will probably die doing this podcast. This might be the rest of my life.
Probably when the blue hedgehog shows up.
Yeah. In a good way, though, of course. I was kind of there's a few points raised there, but on that last one, I was kind of wondering about like essentially Genly says just that. He's like, well, if you're not gonna, you know, come into the fold, then I'll just leave. I got other things to do, and then I'll come back, and then I'll take another crack at it. And if it doesn't work, I'll do it again and again.
Mhm.
Like, who cares? So I took a little note down. I was like, so why doesn't he? Why doesn't he just
He almost
fucking go
does.
then? And then
The
the end of the chapter illuminates this a little bit, but it just seems like Genly feels like he has a personal investment to me.
He definitely does. I think he. I mean, he has a goal. I think he spent time there. He was really optimistic about his chances at you know making this deal or introducing um, the the world to the Ecumen. Um, and yeah, he has. I think there's personal disappointment there. There's betrayal. And I think he is trying to kind of um, square that away with the Ecumen's like philosophy of like slow and steady work, chipping away at the stone. Where I do think he personally wants to get it done. Um, uh,
how many seconds of
and
eternity?
yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he's uneasy with the idea of it being his life's mission and still maybe not succeeding at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true enough. Although, like, that's what sort of. It's not that it's like like, I wouldn't say it's confusing, but like in my mind, it feels like there's kind of two different things happening. Like, on the one hand, Genly's like, oh man, what if I'm trying to do this for the rest of my life? And then on the other hand, he's like, I could come back in a few hours and do it. I can't really square those two things away, like, or together. You know what I mean? I don't quite understand the danger in just leaving for. He says a few hours. I mean, like, realistically, if he was on this planet for 2 years trying to get this done, he might go to Orgary or whatever it was called. It might take him a few hours to get there, but hey, maybe he'd be there for a handful of years. But then it's just a few hours back. I guess I'm just wondering, like, am I missing something, or can I get any more insight? Like, I don't really get the concern. I don't really get why he can't just come back a little later.
Well, there could be a number of reasons we aren't aware of yet. Like maybe I've had the impression that his ship is currently impounded, or at least like under heavy investigation by various Gethanian engineers. So he may not just be able to take off and leave. It could be there's some cost of space travel that we're just not aware of yet. Like maybe getting up to speed takes forever or takes just a lot of money in fuel costs. Um, could be something as
Yeah,
simple as that, or it could just be
well,
he doesn't want to just straight up run away. Immediately after the king banished the guy he's been working with for the last 2 years,
yeah,
and
I guess,
just
but
the
like,
appearance of
if he came back, all the people he's talking to would be dead. That's my
true,
thing. If
well,
everyone that
but
he's
he'd have to
talking to on the
but he'd
planet
have to
would be
start.
dead, then why does he care?
He would also have to start over completely anew.
that's exactly it. He has made leeway here. He has made connections. However, little he understands them or they understand him. Um, there's also I feel like he hasn't been dismissed. He asks if they want him to leave, and then the
Mm-hmm.
guy's like, no, just don't bug me. You have free reign over the of Carhide
The
or
kingdom.
whatever. Like, yeah. And so I don't know. and I think there's probably a bit of planning and communication he would need to have with Ecumen to um, yeah to figure that all out. And he also mentions there's other territories to explore too. So I think even though he feels like he is failing, the job is not over yet.
Right.
There's still more to do on this trip.
That's true. Yeah, the chapter does end with that really good line where it's like, um, when action grows unprofitable, gather information. And
Yes.
it was, but the thing is, like, again, I'm going to say it led to some confusion for me, and then I get it. It's like, well, the answer is to just read more of the book. Like, we've only read 4 chapters. But, like,
2,
now I'm thinking,
honestly.
I guess, sort of, right? Now I'm thinking, like, what is actually, like, the logistics of bringing a planet into the Ecumen Empire when these planets themselves are split up into however many nations? Like, if the king of Karhide agreed, is the planet of Gethin part of the Ecumen Empire? If Genli goes to another region of Gethin and another region agrees, does that affect Karhide in any way? Like, how much of the planet needs to agree in order for the it seems like the king of Karhide has a lot of power, but then also the chapter ends and it's kind of like, oh well, maybe I can just go ask someone else.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think
Yeah.
it would certainly spark, tensions, heightened tensions between territories on Gethin. But I mean, it's not like they would say, okay, well, this leader agreed. We're going to now we're going to corral Karhide by force. Like that's not their deal. That's not the way they work. So I think it would just be it would like incentivize Karhide to rethink their position if another major player agreed, I guess.
Yeah, and my impression was that it's up to the individual nations, but once one of them joins the Ecumen, then the rest of the planet probably follows shortly after. Just because it's so lucrative. I mean, the whole thing seems to be based on trade and guaranteeing stability trading amongst the different worlds and nations. I mean, that's half of Genli's whole spiel is that without um, without the Ecumen, it'd be too risky to do any kind of business between worlds. I think
Yeah.
that's how we get into the conversation with fear and the king and ruling with fear.
Yeah.
I will say, the Ecumen, the more I was reading this chapter, sounded a hell of a lot more like the Ferengi than I was expecting. um, very mercantile based.
The what?
The
From
Ferengi
Star Trek.
from Star
Oh,
Trek,
okay.
yes. Um, there's no like prime directive. It's just it's like one big corporation or the World Trade Organization here on Earth, just like an evolution of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's the more I read, the more I just kept thinking Ferengi, especially at the end. The whole line that Connor mentioned of if
When
action becomes
action grows
unprofitable,
yeah.
unprofitable, gather information, and when then information grows unprofitable, sleep. That sounds like something right out of the rules of acquisition, which is the Ferengi Code of Conduct.
That's interesting. You know what it made me think of is I guess I took it in a little bit of a different way because I didn't think of unprofitable as literal, but then you're
Mm-hmm.
right, Josh. They do talk a lot about trade. But I didn't take that as literal, and I kind of felt like the Ecumen were almost like a noble Bene Gesserit kind of collective, where they're just like
Nice.
kind of going around the galaxy and planting seeds and just like nudging planet, like, oh yeah, no,
Bene
you should,
Gesserit, Bene
yeah.
Gesserit, and maybe a certain race from 2001.
Right. And the farmers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what your corporate overlords would want you to think, wouldn't you?
Good point, Josh.
You're right. Yeah, I should be more wary of the Elon Musk side of the spectrum.
Yeah, more like Bezos.
I need to go back over to the. I think the guy's name in the middle. It literally was something like Papadopoulos.
I don't want to. I don't want to fucking know that guy's name.
It was something like that. Like,
stop ruining the. Stop ruining the illusion.
Also, I'm sorry to like circle back quite a bit here, but you guys were talking about a little while ago about how everyone on Gethin seems to be presenting male until Kemar.
Yes.
And the way you guys were discussing it, I never got a chance to bring it up, and I just remembered again. It was reminding me a lot, all of a sudden, of the Klingon stand-ins from the Orville. I can't remember the race's name, but the main security guard guy is named Bortus. His race is also all male, but there's none of the fluidity that Gethen is showing. It's more of a Seth MacFarlane like hypermasculinity allegory throughout the whole thing. And there are females in that race, and they all hide out in the mountains because they're basically illegal. And there's a whole actually like really good plot line of like all the female members of this race are starting to advocate for their rights on this world and in the colonies. So I don't know. It's just another connection to popular sci-fi. Just I wasn't expecting to connect this book back to something as recent as the Orville. So I just wanted to bring that up before I completely forgot, and I'm sorry if that's just a huge derailment to whatever the conversation was before this.
It's not, because I want to talk more about Kemmering and...
Yeah, I hope we find out more about what that entails. Because it, as far as I'm aware so far, it's something akin to how snails mate, which is not a pretty picture.
Well, I would have no idea.
Here, let's look it up. I want to get it. I'll get a video to put on screen.
Yeah, keep in mind that we're broadcasting live now, so we do have to pay attention to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Josh. Are there rules against live broadcast and snail fucking?
I meant like fuck, what is it called?
I'm sorry, Josh. Can you not see two snails fuck on live TV?
Everything.
Oh, there was Connor's mic.
Everything you need to know about snail sex.
Oh my god,
they're hermaphrodites.
I was trying to get more into the like not getting fucking copyright strikes, but
I would not want to. Josh, I would not broadcast copyrighted snail porn. Okay, I film my own. I film my own.
I'm worried about Connor doing that, not necessarily you. And look at the concentration on his face. He's absolutely about to broadcast.
Oh yeah, no,
he is.
He has found something.
This looks like it is copyrighted. He should not be playing this.
No surprise that in love, garden snails.
This will get us taken down when we rebroadcast on YouTube, Connor.
But this isn't some basic boy meets girl story.
How are they going to find this, Josh?
Snails are hermaphrodites. They have both boy and girl parts.
Oh my god,
you might
algorithm
think that makes life simpler.
They monitor algorithm stuff to...
But
Josh,
not so
Josh,
bad.
algorithms
Turn off the fucking snail video because I can't think. I can't hear.
Josh,
oh my god.
Algorithms cannot account for snails. Just like how AI...
No, they whenever you upload something to YouTube, they check the audio and the video to see if there's anything in their big
you're right,
catalog.
Josh, but no one has made an
That's
algorithm.
What I'm trying to avoid.
No one has made an algorithm that can perfectly identify snail footage.
No, and it's kind of like how dinosaurs can't see you if you stand perfectly still.
Exactly.
It's the same kind of logic.
Right, but with snails.
All right, you guys ready to finish the video?
No.
I want to talk about Kemmering.
All right, Cameron.
Actually, there's a lot of so okay on page 37. Jen Lee has this to say. He says, what am I looking for? Something about them all coming from the same hearth. Like they're all men. They're all
I know what you're talking about. He basically says, oh yeah, towards the bottom. Oh no, sorry. That's what describing what the pictures he laid out.
I think I found it here now. It's towards the top. After these ellipses, he says, "We are all men, you know, sir, all of us. All the worlds of men were settled eons ago from one world, Hain. We vary, but we're all sons of the same hearth." So,
yes,
we kind of already knew this, but there really are no aliens. Something else that feels very Dune-like. There really are no aliens, it seems, and it's all just variations of human beings. And so even Genly coming to Gethin and meeting the Gethenians and all that, you know, they're just kind of like removed descendants, or I don't know how you'd want to put it. But you know, they have a common ancestor.
Yeah. And so it's weird that the Gethenians have changed so much biologically.
Yes.
Everyone else is still biologically two sexes, as far as we can tell. I was taken aback by that passage where he says they all come from one world, Hain, but they're all human. Right. It's like, how much time has passed where either Earth is called Hain, which doesn't make sense to me because there's also another world where Genly's from called Terra, which is another term for Earth that's been around for a while. Or was there some calamity where Hain was a colony that was the only one to survive after Earth was destroyed? There's a lot of questions buried in that one sentence that me as an avid sci-fi consumer would want to ask, but I also feel like we're not going to get those answers in this book, so I need to set them aside.
Yeah, or if we do get answers, I don't think Le Guin really cares. Right. You know, it's not the focus. But yeah, I had a similar thought because we had, I think it was Terra and Altera, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's usually just kind of like the sci-fi lingo for Earth, and yeah, instead they all originate from Hain.
Was it Altera or Altera? Because there's a star called Altair.
Altera or Altera? We're just talking about pronunciation there.
Sorry, I meant that as like it's not all ALL dash Terra. Like
no.
It was like ALT.
No, there's two. They say it's listed back to back. It's like Terra and Altera, and then there's another planet just called Est.
Yep, I see it now.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, and it's obviously meant to raise questions, but so that's all interesting. And then like this is sort of also connected to the whole skin color thing, which we were talking about last time, and it was like, okay, what's going on? Well, Genly is referred to as dark-skinned here, so. So
are they all black as you? Gethenians are yellow-brown or red-brown generally, but I'd seen a good many as dark as myself. And then he says, "I am some are blacker. We come in all we come all colors."
Yeah.
And then he's just showing off things to the king. But yeah, there's the answer to the last week's question of like, wait, are they yellow or
right? And it seems like they. I don't. Right.
They are, but there's like it's just like yellow, like there's shades of it.
Right.
Yeah, but it's yellow brown or red brown.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it is still like a humanish skin color. Or a skin color that we would recognize today.
No, that I disagree with.
Or close to one.
Well, I think if we're saying like, I mean, I can imagine a person that looks, like the way that it's described here, but no, I don't think that when they say, I think that Le Guin is saying that their skin has evolved to look different from any shade that is on current day Earth. And I really do think that their skin is described as and meant to be considered as yellow, as in like the color, and not like super bright yellow, but like
right.
Yeah, not quite the Simpsons.
Yes.
No. Oh god, that'd be terrifying.
But a true yellow hue of the skin.
Yes. I'm currently thinking of like jaundice. But put the fucking book down. What was the other color? Yellow brown or what brown? Red brown. Yeah. Which, coupling this with the fact that Ursula mentions that all the Githenians refer to him as, or most Githenians refer to him as Genry, and can't pronounce the L. There's some stereotypical depictions that would point to Asian ancestry.
Yeah.
Or allusions to that, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but to put this in the most flattering light that I can, it makes me think of the Mongolian people who were adapted to cold climates and that sort of so maybe the Githenians are descended from the East Asian steppes or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're apparently talking about timescales here where it probably does not matter in the slightest, but I think I was reading a little too hard between the lines in what Ursula was writing back in the 60s. So,
well, I mean, not necessarily, because I think you're right, or at least like there's like I get connecting those things, because the whole Githenians not being able to pronounce L's and they say it as R's also jumped out at me, because that's like, as a white guy who watches anime and shit, like, you kind of just get familiar with Japanese culture in a very periphery sort of way. That's just something that you learn, not to say that's just like true across the board, but
yeah, I learned it from history, World War II history, where they would be a differentiator between forces sometimes, where they'd have like the Americans would have a passport like Abraham Lincoln, and would try to get if the Japanese couldn't pronounce it properly, they just shoot them. But
well, there you go. There's that too.
Yeah, that's just how I learned about that stereotypical trait.
Yeah,
that's stuck in our culture, I guess.
But the fact remains,
the reason I was
K. Le Guin put it in her book. So
right.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That's all I mean.
Yeah, it's just trying to keep the context of when this book was written, I guess. And the reason I've been focusing on this so much is because this is informing how I'm visualizing the story as we go forward. Because I've just been imagining these people in furs this whole time, like lots of furs, and now all of a sudden finding out that they maybe could be related to Asian people or the Mongolians specifically is like, oh, now I'm imagining people like with Mongolian motifs in their clothing and stuff like that. Excuse me, and getting a better idea of what to just kind of give a blanket face to some of these characters without any descriptions yet. So, I mean, the king is described as being somewhat pot-bellied. So that just kind of it changes. Everything about how I'm visualizing changes with every few pages that we read. So that's typical of any new book.
Yeah. But there's not a lot to go off on.
No, it's true.
But we still be going for an hour and 20.
Yeah, what do you guys want to say before we jump to chapter 2 or chapter 4 rather?
Let's see, we talked about the inspo. Oh, there was a tiny little thing I noted where he's talking about rubies being his basically how he's making money. He came with a bunch of rubies and is selling them off because they're valuable. But he calls them a carboniferous gem, which stood out to me because rubies are corundum, which means they're made of aluminum oxide and chromium and have absolutely no carbon in them whatsoever.
Nice.
So that one was a little like science gaff.
So suck it, Ursula.
No, I've actually been looking into how rubies are made over the last few months. So it's it was just something that's like, oh, I know that. I don't know why he's calling carboniferous because maybe it's I don't know, maybe the word is something has another meaning in this context that I'm just not aware of. I will happily admit that because I didn't look it up, but on the face of it, it looks like Ursula was just referring to it as a carbon gem like a diamond, which would technically be wrong.
Hmm.
And going off Futurama logic, being technically wrong must be the absolute opposite of technically correct, which would therefore make it the worst, because technically correct is the best kind of correct.
There you go. I had a couple quick things to throw out there.
Go for it.
So, I really liked the whole tension between like their meeting and like Genly and the king, and Genly sort of realizing that he doesn't feel like he can just say why he's there anymore. Like it's the whole situation's kind of funny because he's been waiting to have this meeting for like 2 years, and now he has the meeting. And the day before the meeting, the guy who was supposed to like set him up for it and stuff, he's like, "Oh no, you can't have this fucking meeting. You know, don't go there and talk about the exact reason why you've been on this planet for 2 years. Don't do that." But then like the meeting can't be canceled. Only the king can cancel the meeting. So he has to go to the meeting, and he's at the meeting. And so the king, who just exiled, this dude's homie who was like helping him out and stuff,
Which
now
he found out about literally 5 minutes before walking into the room to see
right.
the king.
And then the king is like, "Okay, so what are you here for? Like, what's up? What can I do you for?" And now Genly is like, well, he can't just say it outright. And so he asks all these sort of like all these questions to kind of not beat around the bush, but he's on page 35. He says, "Do you believe what I say I am?" And the king, I kind of thought, has like this really level-headed response. He said, "Estraven had the physicians send me endless tapes about you and more from engineers at the workshops who have your vehicle and so on. They can't all be liars, and they all say you're human. What then?" So this was something that I wanted to mention because this kind of goes back to the whole language thing. The king says they all say you're not human. So Josh is getting hung up on like the Ruby thing, and I'm getting hung up on the language thing, but I'm just like not human. So do the Gathenians use the word human?
Oh,
But
yeah.
they're speaking in Karadish, right? So none of this is in it. Anyways, I don't have a lot to add on to here, but like I just want to throw out there, like, do you see like what is kind of circulating in my mind as I'm reading this? Because that's a really interesting word to use. They all say you're not human. But as far as we can tell, not only are they all human, because we learned that, they're all related. There are no aliens.
I actually think the really interesting thing that's happening is happening in your mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that you.
It's just it's very interesting what's going on.
I get it.
So when I read that,
because you're not thinking that. I know.
I had a similar thought process where it's like, wait, why is he saying not human? Because I'm pretty sure Genly's human, and the way I reconciled it and continued reading was that the king is using his word for Gathenian.
Yeah,
which is translated into the book as human.
Yeah,
and then
they're obviously referring to not one of us. That's what that means.
Yes.
No, right. And I get that. I'm not confused about the meaning. I'm literally wondering about
why it's translated to
the
human.
Technicality of the language. Because Josh is talking about like, oh, well, I'm trying to picture these characters. Yeah. I am too. And I'm kind of wondering, like, are they speaking in English? That's what I'm wondering. And then it's like, no, the book tells you that they aren't.
I
So
think this is
those
the point
two
where
things together has been like bothering me as I'm reading the book.
Yeah, I think that point is where I started to realize that they aren't speaking English, which when you realize it, it's like, of course they're not speaking English. There's so much time passed that humans are diverging evolutionarily, and of course they're not going to be speaking a language that's only been around for 400 years tops. So it's kind of like Dune, where it's like everyone speaks English, yes, in the book, in the movies, but there's no way they're speaking English in 10,000 years. So when I see
in Dune they are.
I just think that the swear words should be different.
It
like they say, like, oh, grucking mutt or something, you know.
That's not what I'm looking for at all, Connor. That's not. And I'm not even saying that Ursula K. Le Guin should be explaining this. I don't think anything should be different about the book. But I cannot help myself from wondering as I'm reading. Here's the other thing. Maybe a little more meat to dig into. Maybe this will be more your speed, Connor. So on the topic of language, there's no word for war in Karadish. That I thought is really interesting because Karadish, so far we've kind of described it as like seemingly this very kind of feudal, medieval kind of society. There's kings and attendants and palaces and castles, and there's no war. They don't have war.
They have
how are these neighboring kingdoms settling their differences? Ursula K. Le Guin is telling us that it isn't war, and they don't even have a word for it.
Well, they have a different word. They do something else. It's forays, I think.
Yes. Which is not war.
No, it's not. And I think that just, again, points to the fact that the Cathenians have just been doing their own thing for so long that the concept of war is kind of faded as they have these other ways of settling their differences.
Yeah.
And
there's a different way of settling scores, I guess. We don't know if if it's. I mean, obviously, war is hell. War is terrible, but what is what they do
so is the
better.
planet.
Yeah, I mean, it is and then that's a good point. That just the nature of the planet.
Yeah.
Would be tricky to contend with.
Well, I'm not saying that they should be going to war, but like.
We know, Connor, you're a war hawk.
Some people.
Right off camera is a framed portrait of Dick Cheney.
Well, I'm not going to turn my camera to confirm
I swear to God.
or deny. But I mean, like, there just are people who think that war is sort of like inherent, like, fundamental consequence of humanity, that if you have enough people within proximity to each other, that war is inevitable. It's going to happen. Le Guin here is sort of showing us this potential vision where that doesn't happen. And we don't really know what the substitute is. Maybe it's worse. I don't know. But there's that. And the last thing I want to leave on is just the very end of this chapter here, because I thought it was a really good summation of sort of everything that's going on. Josh had mentioned before about Genly kind of feeling like, Estraven was lying to me and the king was lying to me. But then Genly thinks about it more and he's like, hey, maybe Estraven wasn't lying to me. Like, now that I think about it, Estraven might not have been lying to me at all. And it ends with... wait a minute. You know what? I guess I don't need to read this at all. I thought I had a paragraph to read, but I really don't care. You know what I'm trying to say. So that's it. That's what I want to say about that chapter.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah, no, there's a lot there. We're getting deeper into the world. I mean, it brings up as many questions as it doesn't really answer any questions, but it explains some things, I guess. And then raises more questions.
Right.
All right, roll on chapter 4.
Yes, the 19th day.
Did you guys want to take a break, or do you want to just go through?
Nah.
Just go straight through?
Actually, I would like to take
all right,
quick 5-minute break, if that's all right.
Take a type 5.
All right.
5 minutes.
All right.
9:08.
9:08 on the dot. On the dot.
What's up?
We're apparently live again, but we're missing someone still. Oh, here it comes.
Oh,
And the intermission music's still playing.
I'm back. Yeah, buy a new microphone soon.
You already have a microphone.
All right, you guys ready?
You're already live.
did you know? In canon, Ben Solo struggled with insomnia as a child, but Chewbacca, who he called Uncle Chewie, always comforted him until he fell asleep.
Wow.
I did not know that one.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Welcome back. Chapter 2. I'm kind of done. I don't really give a fuck. I don't really give a shit. Chapter 2 was like 4 pages long. What are we going to talk about, you know?
Nova, can you not lick my hand, please?
No. So, Chapter 2, the 19th day. This is sort of like another fable or a bit of folklore or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about this lord who goes to these... I think they're called the foretellers, and the king even kind of mentions them, I think, in conversation in the previous chapter. He's like, oh, you know, I'd get as much of an answer from talking to a foreteller and be like, okay, whatever. Well, hey, now here's some context to that.
I mean, the end of chapter 3 is Genli saying he may go gather information from the foretellers, perhaps. It's literally the second to last word in the chapter.
Right. And so these foretellers that, you know, they seem, at least in this story, to kind of act like, well, I mean, yeah, like a fortune teller, but, you know, more like a witch or something, like in ancient mythology. And to get your fortune read or to have knowledge of the future is to, like, damn yourself. It's, like, very clear that entering into a bargain with these people and like trying to gain any knowledge of the future for your own personal benefit, yeah, you're effectively selling your soul, and there's going to be like some sort of dramatic irony to, or not dramatic irony. It'll end up being ironic, you know, like the twist of fate. And
yeah, it seems like a very classic story trope.
Yes, yeah. It's just like a Greek. Like a Greek fable or story about, you know, like, what's that fucking...
Icarus?
No, I'm thinking of the one where
Hercules.
The guy and his mom...
Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Oedipus,
yes! Yes. That involves a whole... fortune-telling future witch site aspect to it, because that's like the whole thing. It's like, oh shit, we have this prophecy that we have to avoid. Well, guess what, bitch, you heard the prophecy, so there's gonna be a little problem with that.
Yep. Isn't that also like half of Shakespeare as well?
Yeah, yep, that happens in Shakespeare too. Yep. So, you know, it's a well-worn classic storytelling device, and hey, you know, we get it in these short 4 pages to really great effect. It's a good chapter. Really, it basically, you know, it reads and effectively is like a little short story, and yeah. So, you know, this guy kind of goes to them with you know, a selfish sort of desire. He wants to know when he'll die. And the foretellers say it'll be on the 19th day of the month, which they have a word for. And he's like, okay, what fucking month? What year? When's that going to happen? And they don't say because he already made his payment. And so this guy kind of locks himself up in his tower, and he feels like his life is ruined. And every 18th and 19th, he's super fucked up because he thinks he's going to, you know, he might die. And so his lover... in Kemmering, who, you know, goes to the foretellers and then is like, I don't have anything to give you, but I just want to help, you know, and the foretellers are moved by their plight, this selfless act of love. And so
after telling him his life is worthless to them.
Yes, but, you know, still.
In a nice way.
They're moved. they're moved enough to do it. And so they say that, you know, this other guy is going to live longer than the lover who came to them the second time. And so the lover goes back and he's like, hey, good news. And then the other guy's like, no, it's not good news. And then kills him with a table. And then, you know, that
goes crazy and dies.
Right. So fucked up by that. And then dies on the 19th day by hanging himself. And hey, the whole prophecy thing ended up being unavoidably true in a sick, demented, ironic sort of way. What do you know?
Yep. I will say, the way the foretellers were presented, it felt like they did not have control over the prophecies. It felt very much like they were, with little glimpses we got of this process, is that basically they receive payment. They seem to be some sort of like monk order, is how I'm imagining them so far. And they, after receiving payment to foretell, they go through some ritual where they are then gripped by whatever entity, force of nature that allows them to provide a single fortune, which is they're basically the Oracle of Delphi, as close a connection that I can make, and that's just people who got high off like volcano fumes. So I don't know. The story seems to indicate that the foretellers have a form of presight that can be conveyed to others, but it's very much the typical double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Like, the prophecy's unavoidable, and I don't know. With Genli going to see them now, I'm wondering if he's going to get some unavoidable prophecy that he's going to misinterpret, and then at the end he's going to be like, oh, this is what it meant all along.
Right.
So,
but
I don't know.
But you can't do anything about it. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's going to try.
Yes.
Or we find out that the foretellers have been full of shit this whole time, and the prophecy was never set in stone. He can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine that. That's always the big question. That's like reading Dune, you know. Yeah. I really don't feel like I have as much to say about this chapter, but I guess what I will say is I like it. I appreciate that it does kind of feel like it has this sort of classical, almost like timeless kind of storytelling feel to it. Like, it really feels like, you know, an ancient story that would be a part of this culture. I think what I like about it the most is that it makes the world and the culture of Gethin feel that much more real, because we're presented as this being a story that's part of like their past, their ancient culture. And
yeah, the beginning of the chapter says it's an East Karhedish story, as told in Gorenherring Hearth by Tobard Chorhawa. So it's like a written account of an oral story.
Yeah,
is how it's recorded.
I realized in that citation there that the GA stands for Genli I.
Yeah, it took me a couple readings to figure that out too.
But I didn't. You know, when you read the first two chapters, it's like, what? You don't even think about it.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder what the 1492 is. I'm pretty sure the 1492 is like the current Ecumen year, but I don't know what the 93 is. It's like the 93rd age?
Yeah, there's something about that. I don't know. There's something about that. They've talked about it, but I just don't remember.
Yeah. I noticed when I was flipping through the book earlier, there's a... oh, here we go. In chapter 1, it's Hainish Cycle 93, Ecumenical Year 1490 through 97. So this is 2 years into his report during the 93rd Hainish Cycle. Whatever that is. Which, apparently, Hain is where humans come from in this universe. So, 93rd Cycle could be something to do with... Maybe it's the 93rd year on Hain? Or maybe there's some cycle on Hain we're just not aware of, having only read 4 chapters in The Left Hand of Darkness.
Yeah.
3 other books by Le Guin.
Yeah, who knows? That's a big question mark. We just don't know.
Yeah. There's a appendix in the back that talks about the hours and the timekeeping on Gethen that I kind of skimmed through last week. Mostly just to figure out most of what I gleaned there was the way the hours work.
Well, I'm not going to read that until the end of the book.
Well, it's the afterword. It's kind of like the end of Return of the King, where we find out how everything was translated and a bunch of other backstory stuff that's not included in the text.
There you go. That's that sounds like exactly what I'm looking for based on my whole language discussion. So that's good. Maybe I'll get those answers.
Maybe. When I was looking at it, I just looked at stuff on timekeeping. Yeah, it's just called the Gethenian Calendar and Clock. So it's not even about.
Well, we'll see, Josh. We'll get to it in 8 weeks. So
it's the best part of the book. I'm telling you right now.
I'm looking forward to it. Connor, what do you think of this chapter here? This whole story.
No, I think it's a nice fable. It's nice having these interspersed throughout
Fable's a good word.
The book. I think it's cool kind of getting to see the foretellers after them being name dropped in the previous chapter and maybe generally going to pay him a visit. Just also a bit more about the Kemmering relationship. So I think it's a cool little chapter, and I'm always thrilled when there's one regular sized chapter and one short chapter. I'm like, oh yeah. Not that reading
Well,
is
get used
fun.
to it.
It is, but yeah. So I'm sure that will change, but yeah, it's like a nice little mini. It's like a nice little mini-sode.
It is. I agree.
Yeah.
On the whole Kemmering topic, I mentioned this before, but this was the chapter where it felt like it kind of clicked for me, where I was like, oh, it must be that everyone on Gethren, this is going to be like very sort of reductive, language. I get that it's much more fluid than this, but like effectively it's like, oh, everyone on Gethren is male. And then through Kemmering, they like become female. Again, I don't think that it's really exactly like that, but this was the chapter where I kind of got that feeling because, the previous 2 chapters, the second chapter, we get the whole fable with the brothers, and it's like, okay, they're brothers, right? So, of course they're both male, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it happens again here with these other 2 lovers, and I was like, well, all right. That seems like
twice as a coincidence.
Right. It just seems like that's enough of a reoccurrence given everything else, because it just hasn't even been mentioned that there's any quote unquote female presenting characters in the book.
Aside from when Genly mentions female traits amongst the people he's interacting with.
Yes.
So.
Which does not make them female, but yeah.
No, but that's as close as we can get right now.
Yeah. And so like the ways in which like their relationship is described and the ways in which they're described as, lovers and again, in any other story, it's not that would be weird on the face of it. There's that's fine. That's all good. But within this book, The Left Hand of Darkness, it sort of like raises those questions of the nature of like gender on what's the planet? Gethren. Right. Gethen. And so yeah, I don't know. it effectively seems like through Kemmering and the whole language with like the king saying that like everyone else out in the void who's permanently male or female, that they're all sex perverts or whatever. It seems as though Kemmering is itself the act of sex, and that I think that those on Gethin only have sex through Kemmering, in which one of this like bonded pair becomes female, and then they have sex, and then like that's the conclusion of Kemmering, and then they both go back. These are all quotes. If you're watching the video, you can see all the quotes I'm doing here. You know, to a male or as a male. And so like the king seems to be making this like sort of humorous and bizarre conflation where if you're permanently female, then you must just be having sex all the time, because that's what you do through Kemmering, I'm assuming. It sounds like, given 4 chapters in. Like, I think that's where that misunderstanding on the king is coming from, where it's like, well, the purpose of becoming female is to like be bonded in Kemmering, aka sex. So if you're permanently female, must that not mean you're always doing it? And I think like that's maybe like the biggest insight where I was like, I think it's like even a little bit more than just like, oh, like they changed genders. It's like, I think to be female on Gethin is to be engaged in like the act of sex itself.
You may be onto something. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Has a lot of implications for philosophy of some groups in the modern world.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, there's plenty of bad faith interpretations that
yes, there are.
And we're not making any of those bad faith interpretations or assumptions. This is all just discussion right here, baby. I mean, fuck, we've only read like not even 50 pages of this book.
Nope.
So
I just checked the page count. We're going to be on page 96 next week. We're going to basically double the amount of pages we've read.
Wow.
Buckle in, boneheads.
Well, we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to have to talk about it a lot faster next time, because you know, we're kind of
I don't know how we turned fucking 14 pages into a 2-hour conversation. How do we keep doing this?
That's what we do best on Chapter Chumps.
Yes, yeah. That's it's just that's how it goes around these parts.
That's what we do best. This could have been a 20-minute conversation. Yeah. And we could have essentially discussed all the same stuff, but that wouldn't have been a podcast, you know?
And it wouldn't have been as
It would have
fun.
been. It just would have been a shorter podcast.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have been as fun.
Yeah.
But that's all I want to say about it. Is there anything else? Any foretellings you want to make, or anything we may have missed in these chapters? Guess not.
Read it before. He's referring to you.
Well, no, I'm not gonna be a foreteller. No.
Okay. Why is my camera?
I'll say something like, in 4 chapters, something will change. But no, that's not real. I'm just making something up. I'm just trying to think of something that sounds alluring.
Well, I mean, I would hope that you'd be right about that.
Yeah. I was trying to make it as vague as possible, so it will probably be applicable to 4 chapters from now.
Well, hey, we'll see if anything changes in the next 2 chapters, because that's what we're going to be discussing next time.
Yes. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in, both audio listeners, podcast listeners, or video watchers, watching the video with your own 2 eyes. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. We can do that in the 21st century. They didn't predict video podcasts in 2001: A Space Odyssey, now did they? Not quite.
No. I think they have video telephones.
They did, yes. Yeah. Which we don't have.
I just don't know why Arthur C. Clarke did not envision the podcast
I know he never, you know,
The reinvention of the radio. How would he ever predict that?
Joe Rogan never came up
True.
in his vision of the future. So
No, he thought that people were too smart for that.
yeah. Anyways, yeah. Thanks for tuning in. You can follow us on social media. We are at Chapter Chumps on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. We would love for you to stop by your preferred podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. Give us a nice review and a 5-star rating. That'll boost us up in the algorithm. So we can beat the snails at their own game.
With some of the videos I've seen before, beating snails means something way different, Connor.
That's a great point. That's a great. I don't want to give listeners any ideas or any nightmares for those who have vivid imaginations. Yeah, next week chapters 5 and 6. Oh, I guess I'll say, like, you can find the video. Well, you can watch us stream if you want at sporadic times, usually Wednesday night, on twitch.tv/counterclockwise. We're still figuring out a proper name for the channel.
We're posting links on Blue Sky at least.
Yeah, and then also
See
they
about
will
the rest
be
of social media,
available.
too.
They'll be available on YouTube on Corrupted TV afterwards. All right, folks. Well, until next time.
It's treason then.
Josh just has to be the emperor. Great.
He was setting that up for, like, you could tell when he decided he wanted
when
to do that.
when the hood was over his eyes. Yeah.
I swapped the Kraber crystal in this lightsaber like right before the podcast.
But it does work with what the king says in chapter 3, so it feels like it makes sense. Yeah, I get it.
I've been fiddling with